Ukraine have signed an agreement on access to natural resources. Tyrone Bowman, live. According to Bloomberg, the U.S. and Ukraine reached a deal over access to Ukraine's natural resources Wednesday, a move that Kyiv sought to solidify President Donald Trump's backing and ceasefire talks with Russia. The deal will grant the U.S. privileged access to new investment projects to develop Ukraine's natural resources, including aluminum, graphite, oil, and natural gas. It's been seen as a critical to nurturing Trump's goodwill toward Kyiv as his administration pushes to end the war that began when Russia mounted its full-scale invasion of Ukraine more than 3 years ago. Quote, this agreement signals clearly to Russia that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in a statement, end quote. Ukrainian Economic Minister Yulia Severenko said in a social media post that, quote, together with the United States, we are creating the fund that will attract global investment into our country, end quote. After weeks of Ukrainian and U.S. officials are wrangling over the intent of the text, momentum toward a breakthrough was building early this week with Ukrainian negotiators visiting Washington to iron out final details. The two sides have agreed on the main accord, but were discussing technical details spelled out in separate text. Ukrainian officials had been hoping to sign the overreaching deal and nail down the details later, but the U.S. insisted all components be agreed on together, a person familiar with the matter said. We made a deal where our money is secure, where we can start digging and doing what we have to do, Trump said at a cabinet meeting at the White House earlier Wednesday. It's also good for them because you'll have an American presence at the site. And the American presence will keep a lot of bad actors out of the country, or certainly out of the area where we're doing the digging, quote, close quote. The accord was reached as Trump marked the first 100 days of his current term, and it's under pressure to notch victories as polls have shown an erosion of his favorability, driven largely by a gust over his economic policies. He's also been frustrated in delivering on promises to bring quick solutions to the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza. The accord will grant the U.S. First claim on profits transferred into a special reconstruction investment fund that will be controlled by Washington. The deal is intended in part to reimburse the U.S. for future military assistance to Ukraine, but Ukraine's Prime Minister denies Shamha has said that Washington dropped its insistence that the deal provide for repayment of billions of dollars in aid already delivered since the start of Russia's invasion. In recognition of the significant financial and material support that the people of the United States have provided to the defense of Ukraine since Russia's full invasion, this economic partnership positions our two countries to work collaboratively and invest together to ensure that our mutual assets, talents, and capabilities can accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery, close quote. The U.S. Treasury Department said in a statement, you're watching Tyrone Bowman live. If you like the program, kindly subscribe. White House officials have said Trump has been increasingly frustrated with both Ukraine and Russia and the difficulty in getting them to agree to end Moscow's invasion of its neighbor. Trump has threatened to walk away if there's no progress in those ceasefire negotiations, raising concerns about Ukraine's allies about the extent to which Kyiv may be blamed for talks falling apart. With a natural resources deal between the UK and Russia, between the UK and the United States, Trump may be more lenient toward Kyiv. A previous attempt to clinch the agreement fell through earlier this year after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky clashed with Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance in the Oval Office. U.S. and Ukrainian officials signed a memorandum of intent earlier in April and continued to hash out the technical details of the deal. Zelensky then met one-on-one with the U.S. president at the Vatican on Saturday before the funeral of Pope Francis. U.S. and Ukrainian officials signed a memorandum of intent earlier in April and continued to hash out the technical details of the deal. which would grant the U.S. first claim on profits transferred into a special reconstruction investment fund that will be controlled by Washington. Zelensky said then met one-on-one with the U.S. president at the Vatican. As part of the agreement, the U.S. and Ukraine will seek to create the conditions to, quote, increase investment in mining, energy, and related technology in Ukraine. According to the draft document, Washington also acknowledges Kyiv's intentions for the deal to avoid any conflicts with its plans to join the European Union, long seen as a red line for Ukraine in the talks. Tyrone Bowman, never surrender, never quit.